The moment Ivy click-clacked through the glass doors, I could feel the atmosphere shift. Not just from the aggressive way her stilettos pierced the tile like they had a vendetta against interior design. Not even from the swarm of men trailing behind her, all perfectly groomed, sporting identical messenger bags like extras from a failed pilot about Silicon Valley influencers. No, I knew something had changed when her gaze landed on me, sitting quietly in the bullpen corner, knitting, and she let out a syrupy little gasp. "Oh, sweetie, you can finish that sweater at home. We're busy building the future here." The entire floor went dead still. You could hear the whir of the data center fans and the gentle hiss from someone's LaCroix can. I didn't flinch. Just looped the final stitch, snipped the yarn, and tucked the half-knit sock into my tote bag. Like I'd been waiting for her to say that. Because I had. This wasn't the first time a designer label dilettante underestimated me. But it was the first time one of them came with a C-suite title and access to my repositories. Ivy Worthington, freshly crowned CTO thanks to her surname and her dad's checkbook, was here to modernize. Translation: remove the veterans, bring in the buzzwords. Before we dive into the glorious disaster that followed, quick sidebar: if you're enjoying this tale of strategic vengeance, go ahead and tap that follow button. 97% of you haven't, and believe me, nothing fuels this team like caffeine and retribution. Much appreciated. Back to the story. That afternoon, Ivy held an all-hands reorientation. Sat cross-legged on a bar stool in the conference room like a TED Talk dropout with a Shopify sponsorship. She chirped about vision, agility, and disrupting stagnation, conveniently avoiding eye contact with me. Even when she brought up phasing out outdated team structures, her eyes skipped right past me like I was a piece of outdated furniture. Her assistant, a poor, overworked code camp grad named Skylar, handed out glossy new org charts. Mine had a red arrow pointing at my name, Transition Resource. I've had dentist appointments delivered with more compassion. That night, I stayed late. Not out of necessity, out of intent. I wanted witnesses. I slid my knitting bag aside, hooked up my backup drive, and opened the encrypted vault labeled LMI Core version 3.2. Inside was the scaffolding of the entire platform they were planning to disrupt. 3 patents, half a dozen modules, and every architectural decision that made the system run. All built by me. All licensed under my consultancy, under my LLC, and under revocable agreements. They'd seen me as the quiet one, sipping peppermint tea and counting stitches, forgetting I held the architectural keys. I saved everything. 3 backups, 1 on that drive, 1 to cold storage, 1 sent to an offshore server I'd set up in Reykjavik after they cut the QA team in Q2 and doubled their influencer budget. That's not innovation. That's what I call, check your parachute. The next morning, my access badge failed at the server room door. And I knew, I was officially a ghost. That's when I smiled. Because ghosts with contracts don't haunt. They invoice. They called it a strategic restructure. Which is adorable, considering this came from a woman who once asked if Python was the one with the coffee cup logo. Overnight, my job title shape-shifted into something like Principal Legacy Consultant Emeritus. Which is corporate for, don't let her near the servers, but keep her happy so she doesn't sue. Access revoked. Slack channel gone. The private dev group I founded 6 years ago, archived. Jira? Empty. No tasks. New PM introduced herself via chirpy DM, just hang tight while we reassign priorities. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I haven't been that condescended to since my ex-husband explained what a thermostat does. My calendar? Ghost town. No stand-ups, no planning, no 1:1s. I was a phantom, acknowledged with polite nods but never addressed. I could have roller skated through the halls wearing a cape and blasting reggaeton, Ivy still wouldn't have noticed. But the thing about being invisible? You hear everything. Ivy roamed the halls spouting jargon like a malfunctioning chatbot, scalability, containers, value unlock, and half-baked buzzwords. Her dev team nodded along, frantically Googling under the table. At one point, she said, "The backend's pretty much plug and play, right?" I had to bite my tongue so hard I tasted blood. That plug-and-play system was a custom Frankenstein stitched across 5 languages and 3 microservice clusters, all of which I'd harmonized by sheer willpower and cold brew. One dull afternoon, I sat at my desk, now exiled behind a pillar, and cracked open the original consulting agreement. Back from when the company was just me, the founder, and a janky rented rack in Cincinnati. I'd insisted on my own lawyer. There it was in black ink. Full retention of all IP unless explicitly transferred in writing. Clause 14b. Everything I brought in, the foundation, the core logic, the patents, all mine. L. Morgan IP Holdings LLC. No transfers. No ambiguity. Just oversight. Their oversight. Ivy was too busy filming TikToks in the stairwell to read the fine print. But I remembered 2017. Snowed in, broke. Running my LLC out of a drafty studio with a busted space heater and a second-hand ThinkPad. 3 hours of sleep, expired protein bars. When they brought me in full-time, I kept my IP where it belonged. I was loyal. Not naive. So when HR handed me transition paperwork, I read every word. Buried in legal mulch was a clause asking me to reaffirm non-ownership of platform assets. I grabbed a red Sharpie, struck it out, and wrote, IP exclusion retained as per 14b. Signed it. Smiled. They thought they were sidelining me. All they really did was hand me the keys to a very quiet, very legal revenge. It all came to a head on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, caffeine-stale day that tastes like old dreams. I was eating dry biscotti and watching deployment logs like a retiree staring at slots. Then, ping. Slack lit up. Ivy, trying to DM her new product lead, posted in the wrong channel. A company-wide one. All 43 engineers saw it. Honestly, we need to purge the legacy. Dead weight. Lena's still here. Why? The period hit like a slap. Cold. Dismissive. The kind of cruelty you write when you assume people like me don't read, don't care, don't matter. You could feel the air shift. Someone sent a confused emoji. Another left the channel. Jonah, bless him, messaged me, "I'm so sorry. That was messed up." I gave him a thumbs up and finished my snack. 50 minutes later, HR pinged me. "We'd love to touch base." Always ominous when HR wants to touch anything. I met them in the wellness room, which smelled like cucumber and compliance. Rebecca from People Ops was waiting, all empathy face and manila folders. "We'd like to offer a transition package," she said. 6 weeks severance, and maybe a LinkedIn rec, if I left gracefully. I nearly laughed. They wanted to erase me, tidy and polite, like I was a coffee stain on a white couch. "Of course," I said sweetly, with the smile of a woman halfway to hell and not planning to turn around. She slid the papers across the table. Corporate boilerplate. Legalese. Mutual this, agreeable that. Then I saw it. Clause 7, employee relinquishes all claim to intellectual property associated with the platform. I clicked my pen. Drew a straight red line through the sentence. Wrote, IP exclusion retained as per original consulting agreement, clause 14b. Initialed it. Slid it back across the table like I was calling her bluff. Rebecca blinked. "Oh, I'll need to run that by legal." "Please do," I said, cool as January. "I'll wait." She tried to smile. I didn't. Then I stood and walked out before she could find her words. I didn't need her permission. I had the documentation. That same afternoon, I cleared out my desk, or what was left of it. My favorite ceramic mug, a dog-eared notebook filled with system diagrams from my first infrastructure blueprint, and of course, the knitting needles Ivy once mocked. I tucked them into a canvas tote like artifacts from a battle long forgotten by everyone but me. No speeches. No send-off cake. Just a hallway of turned backs and muted Slack emojis. They thought the story ended there. But I wasn't retreating, I was stepping out of the detonation zone. And Ivy? She had just yanked the pin. By Friday, I had vanished. No Slack presence, no GitHub pushes, no updates in Notion. Just a sterile goodbye email, all empty optimism and vague praise, signed off simply, Lena. That was it. They took it as a win. You could practically hear the espresso machine harmonizing with Ivy's mood. That morning, she strutted in heels even higher than usual, breezing through meetings like she was pitching on Shark Tank. They probably thought I'd gone full cottagecore, trading code for tomatoes and a Facebook group called Ladies in Career Transition. Then came Monday. Jonah messaged me, "Hey, do you know where the deployment config went?" The pipeline's crashing at the container registry. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The answer was locked inside a repo no one else even knew existed. My private repository. My naming rules, my system logic, my whole layout. The vascular system of the platform. And the registry file? That was just the beginning. The architecture began to behave like a bad dream, logic loops where flows should be, switches that went nowhere, a backend folding in on itself like a snake eating its tail. A junior dev named Aiden commented on one of my orchestration files. / to do. What is Kronig? Kronig, an old joke between me and a long-gone engineer who now sells surfboards in Bend. But the Kronig script? That one triggered a critical rollback failover process for CI failures. Without it, their entire deployment framework was face-planting into walls. Ivy, predictably, refused to show concern. She barked in a team call, "Bring in contractors." She wore a fitted leather jacket that day, tried to channel authority but looked more like a flustered airline stewardess. "We'll clean this up in 2 weeks." So they flew in reinforcements. A Romanian firm. Another from Hyderabad. Talented people. Bright engineers. All of them staring at my code like it was an alien manuscript carved in obsidian. Jonah later told me one contractor rage quit mid-sprint, muttering about American arrogance and unmaintainable legacy spaghetti. But Ivy pushed forward. Failure wasn't on the table, not with investor demos looming. Not with her LinkedIn already packed with vague promises about revolutionary back-end architecture. She smiled. Held her breath. Lit the fuse. They set the launch date, June 1st. No beta, no pilot, just one colossal cannonball into production. Meanwhile, inside the engineering team, dread bloomed. Authentication started failing in staging. The autoscaler wouldn't scale. Payment log errors triggered infinite alert loops, pinging the founder's phone at ungodly hours. Then came the moment. During a dev stand-up, the new CTO, a guy named Todd who wore Bitcoin cufflinks and talked like he was still on a TED stage, asked, "Hey, where's the pipeline schema stored?" There was a beat of hesitation. Then Jonah spoke. It was in Lena's private repo. Silence. Not just the awkward kind. The kind that presses into your ribs. Ivy blinked. What private repo? The team stared at each other like a bunch of kids who just realized the babysitter had left and the house was on fire. The repo wasn't part of the org's GitHub. It was mirrored weekly to my LLC's secure vault server, The same one with the modules covered under contractual licensing. The same vault Ivy never once asked about because she assumed it all belonged to her. But here's the reality of building something from scratch. You remember where the load-bearing beams are buried. And Ivy? She didn't even bring a flashlight. Jonah, bless him, still believed in effort. While everyone else was duct-taping patches and pretending the APIs weren't screaming in 12 different languages, he started digging. Late at night, between crash reports and Ivy's chirpy Slack affirmations about trusting the process, he traced a line of code buried deep in the orchestration tree. A single reference, partially masked by years of bad naming and technical debt. He followed it. Opened the path. Traced the imports. Froze. The modules weren't legacy fluff. They were the neural core, the API router, the event cache, the task scheduler that let the whole engine scale under pressure. The L. Morgan Stack version 3.2. He pinged Ivy in the thread. Hey, just flagging, this is still referencing the L. Morgan modules. Should we clarify the licensing terms? She replied in under 3 minutes with. Just comment it out. Like you could just comment out a central nervous system. Jonah didn't argue. Instead, he quietly forked the repo. Downloaded the full dependency map. Every import. Every nested function that whispered my name through the logs like a secret only ghosts could hear. I was in my kitchen, sipping slightly stale tea, watching it all unfold. 2 weeks prior, I'd set up a small bot. A cloud function that logged every external ping to my modules. Time, IP, entry point. No blocking. No alerts. Just quiet tracking and itemized billing. 1 hit turned to 10. 10 to hundreds. Dev environments. Test sandboxes. Even Ivy's demo dashboard for investors, all running on my systems. The billing didn't go out in a dramatic burst. That's not my style. It began with an email. From invoices@morgan-ip.com to accounting@theircompany.com. Subject, Q2 License Usage Report, L. Morgan IP Holdings. Attachment, CSV with timestamps, modules, usage breakdowns. Not aggressive. Just, official. Legal hadn't seen it yet. Ivy definitely hadn't. Too busy planning live stream overlays and LED backdrops. Jonah saw it though. He saw the subtle decline in system reliability. The silence in logs. The whispers in the stack traces. He messaged me once. You planned this, didn't you? I didn't reply. Not to be coy. I was just busy updating the invoice template, added a field for, per user licensing tier, optional. The flames hadn't started. But the air was warming. By May, the office smelled like nervous sweat and oversteeped coffee. Ivy was laser-focused on June 1st. Big launch. Big stream. Big lies. They leased out a co-working loft with exposed beams and LED panels. Hired interns to run it like a startup halftime show. Hashtags everywhere. Hashtag next-gen backend. Hashtag AI reimagined. Hashtag built different. Not one word about me. Couldn't be. They didn't understand what they were standing on. And Ivy? She was too busy rehearsing her disruptive innovation speech in the bathroom mirror to notice the scaffold was crumbling. The dev team was fraying. Merge conflicts, disappearing features, undocumented behaviors. Jonah patched what he could. But even superglue has limits. He emailed Ivy. Subject, Relic Licensing Risk, LMV 3.2 Modules Urgent. Body. The current platform continues to run on proprietary modules authored by L. Morgan IP Holdings. To my knowledge, we do not have an active commercial license. She opened the email. I know, the logs showed 47 seconds on the message. Then she deleted it. No reply. Just a new post on her LinkedIn later that day. So proud of this team. We're redefining backend intelligence. Stay tuned for June 1st rocket light bulb. That wasn't ignorance anymore. That was negligence on a rocket ship. She strutted through prep meetings with a buzzword bingo card and a smug grin. Serverless first logic chains, she said. Workflow accelerants. Containerized performance rituals. Lena who? Jonah tried one last time. Quiet message to legal. Crickets. Nobody wanted to acknowledge the phantom in the machine, not while they were busy printing confetti. Meanwhile, I was quiet. Not lurking. Not scheming. Just documenting. On May 18th, at 3:12 a.m., I uploaded a clean copy of the entire L. Morgan Stack version 3.2 to the U.S. Copyright Office. Every class, every comment, every module. Timestamped. Annotated. Filed. By May 20th, the registration was live. Public record. IP registered under L. Morgan IP Holdings LLC. No drama. Just a digital landmine, sitting in plain view. I added a subtle update to my company website that day. All externally utilized modules require valid licensing. Automated tracking in place. Monthly invoicing applies. That's all. Back at Launch Central, Ivy was still debating whether to part her hair left or right for the camera. Dev morale was ashes. People too scared to speak. June 1st was locked in. No turning back. And the closer it loomed, the louder the silence got. Launch day arrived in a parade of denial and filtered lighting. The live stream went live at exactly 10 a.m. Ivy hit the stage in white sneakers and a designer blazer, brimming with messianic startup energy. Behind her, a 12-foot screen read, "Welcome to the future, adaptive backend AI, rebuilt from scratch." Which was ironic. Because the foundation was still mine. The demo mostly worked. There were a few stumbles, some slight lag, one UI hiccup, a random pop-up filled with placeholder Latin, but Ivy handled it with polished calm. Investors clapped in the live chat. Twitter started humming. Off camera, the founder wiped away a tear like he'd just watched the birth of the future. At 10:41 a.m., only 3 minutes after the final round of applause, the first thread unraveled. A soft notification hit the accounting department's inbox. The subject line read, IP license fee Q1 usage report from invoices at L. Morgancom. The attached spreadsheet from L. Morgan Holdings broke down everything: server call timestamps, module IDs, runtime hours, environment splits, demo, staging, production, and at the very bottom, a grand total. $182,600 due. The remittance? Payable to L. Morgan IP Holdings LLC. Ivy never saw it. An intern managing accounting thought it looked like spam and flagged it. But 40 minutes later, legal picked it up. Bryce, the legal director, still old school with shirt stays, forwarded it to Ivy, the CFO, and CTO with a sharp tag and one chilling line. "This looks enforceable. We need to talk now." Ivy skimmed the email and replied quickly. "Ignore. We've moved off that code." Only, they hadn't. By 12:07 p.m., Jonah, a senior engineer, replied with 2 damning screenshots, one of the codebase actively calling LM Stack v32 core, and another from the deployment logs, clearly timestamped during the live demo. His message ended with a sentence that hit like a bullet. "We are currently running unlicensed code. This invoice is not spam." That's when the panic took root. Legal went dark, never a good omen. Slack channels caught fire. Accounting started pinging engineering. Engineering tagged DevOps. Ivy locked herself in the launch room, pacing, muttering, gnawing her thumbnail like it held the answer. Then Jonah dropped the hammer. In the private leadership ops channel, he posted. Just confirmed with the Copyright Office. Code registered to L. Morgan Holdings. May 20th. Public record. Stillness. Static. Shallow breathing. At 12:53 p.m., Bryce added more fuel. Also per original consulting agreement, auto-renewal of the license had to be confirmed 30 days before use. I sent a termination notice 48 hours before the launch. It was received, acknowledged, and confirmed. This is fully enforceable. But Ivy had been too busy curating her launch day Instagram posts to notice. The CFO's voice reportedly carried 2 floors up when he saw the invoice. What do you mean we owe her? 180. The celebration dissolved. Investors stopped replying. The champagne was never even opened. Ivy, pale now, looked again at the invoice and noticed a small line she'd skipped before. Additional usage above threshold will incur tiered per seat fees. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment somewhere, beside a purring cat and an uncorked bottle of Conti, Lena Morgan, hit send. Invoice Q2 projection. By morning, the air had soured. What had been hyped as a triumph was now unraveling into a liability circus. Tech reporters began circling. A freelancer tweeted. Hearing whispers of a licensing problem at yesterday's launch. Involving L. Morgan Holdings? Soon it became a thread. Then a headline. Startup launch built on unlicensed code. Legal trouble ahead. Investors who'd showered Ivy with heart emojis were now replying with concern. One emailed bluntly. Please clarify. Is Lena Morgan suing us? I wasn't. I didn't have to. The documents were doing just fine without me. By noon, the board held an emergency meeting. The founder looked hollow. The CFO's left eye twitched like bad wiring. Ivy, trying to steer the wreckage, recited the line she'd rehearsed all morning. It was a clerical error. We're reviewing licensing agreements. It'll be resolved amicably. Bryce, now very much not on Team Ivy, slid across the table a binder, my original consulting contract. Clause 14b was highlighted and circled. Usage rights granted through renewable license under L. Morgan IP Holdings. No transfer of ownership. Below that, my formal termination notice from 2 days pre-launch, signed, time-stamped, delivered, confirmed. This isn't a threat, Bryce said calmly. It's enforceable. What's the total? The founder asked, face drained. Bryce replied without blinking. $182,600. With Q2 usage projections and per seat scaling, closer to $460,000 and climbing. Someone audibly gasped. A young board member pulled out her phone and played a now-deleted TikTok from Ivy's private account. A behind-the-scenes rehearsal. Ivy, laughing into the camera. Lena? That woman just knits and coasts. We rebuilt everything she touched. This is my platform now. The room fell into a horrified silence. She hadn't rebuilt anything. She hadn't even read what she signed. Jonah, still near the door, finally spoke. Didn't rebuild. Just reskinned. The core's still hers. The founder turned to Ivy. Is that true? And for once, she said nothing. There were no raised voices. That would have been too easy. Instead, a deep, cold stillness. The kind that signals something irreversible. What if we don't pay? Someone asked. Then she'll pursue collection, Bryce replied. She has every receipt. Every timestamp. We'd lose. Fast. And very publicly. The founder, barely breathing, muttered. Get her on the phone. But I don't take calls, not from people who laughed while I knit in silence, building systems they pretended to understand. That afternoon, the shouting in the boardroom echoed all the way to the parking lot. Ivy arrived 10 minutes late, all her usual confidence shrunk into stiff shoulders and white sneakers. The founder didn't sit. Who did this? He asked. Bryce silently slid another document across the table, Q2 invoice, $460,000. Annotated usage. Copyright confirmation. Multiple ignored warnings. Jonah, without looking up. We all knew. No one listened. The CFO, finally speaking, voice hollow. You built this company on stolen tech. Ivy flipped through the pages like she could erase them with friction. But the ink stayed put. The founder took a breath. This is a formal request for your resignation. Effective immediately. She didn't cry. Didn't protest. Just stood and walked out as if someone had finally said what she'd known deep down all along. The door clicked shut behind her like a verdict. Later that day, I got the email. Subject, L. Morgan Licensing, Re. Open to negotiation. Tone, desperation wrapped in diplomacy. Dear Ms. Morgan, we hope to revisit licensing terms and resolve this misunderstanding in a way that benefits both parties. I didn't reply. Instead, I sipped wine from a goblet-sized glass in a vineyard north of Florence. A cat I didn't own slept on my sandals. My laptop rested quietly beside me. I opened the license portal, edited the global pricing agreement, and changed one line. Per seat pricing, enabled. Retroactive fees, applicable. Saved. Closed the laptop. Picked up my knitting. Sometimes, silence is a blade sharper than rage. And the smartest contract will always outlast the loudest voice. If you're ever underestimated, don't lash out. Get exact. Get patient. Get even. Thanks for sticking around, Break Room Legends. Hit subscribe, let's make someone's boss sweat tomorrow.